Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to another movie review. I'm Chris, joined today with George, and we are continuing our reviews on the Oscar films, all of the Academy Award films this year. There's still a lot I need to watch, but we're getting through them slowly, and this is definitely one of the biggest contenders. This has actually been nominated for 10 Academy Awards, all the big hitters, Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Cinematography. I think it's been nominated for as well, hasn't it? Among many others, all of the technicals, Best Original Screenplay as well. This is definitely one of the big ones, and I was quite late to this one. I think this came out last week or so for us in the UK. In all honesty, looking back now, I kind of wish, it would have been released last year officially, so I could have put it on my list because it would definitely have featured on there, definitely in my top five. But I'm glad I got to see it now and on the big screen as well. I think you saw this last week, actually, didn't you? But we've been kind of waiting until both of us or more of us had seen the movie until we got a review out for this thing.
Yeah, it came out on the 10th in England, which I venomously disagree with, that a British war film was released in America before England. Not to sound racist, I don't think it's a racist comment.
We have to be sometimes.
It's like, like Bond films on standard come out in England a week before. I respect that. British production, British cinema, British that, patriotic, get your flags out, Bond. 1917 was, when it was like January the 10th, England, Christmas Day, America. I was like, why can't I watch it on Christmas Day? Like, sometimes it's absurd. 1917 is, as you can tell, a war film. I don't really know how we can get into this. I said, you've just seen it. I saw this, the IMAX on the 10th on release night. I mentioned to you before hit record. Never ever seen a sold out IMAX for a non-Star Wars or Marvel film. That blew me away. I quite liked that. It was definitely worth watching in that format. War films, as you mentioned, for the Oscar nominations, from a technical standpoint, you get a good war film, they will always be their Oscar season. Even if it's an average film, it's likely going to get some nominations. If it's a bad war film, like that Midway, no one will speak about it. They will remove it from their mind because it's distasteful. War films are very hard to get right. And I kind of mentioned to you before hit record, like going into real life history of everything. World War One is not a war that has the not money of World War Two. That sounds horrible, but World War Two is very much the war. You've had so many games, so many films. It's more recent in the memory. Obviously, there are still veterans alive. We've had the Holocaust. There's real life issues with that. World War One is not spoken about as much, albeit more people died in this war. It was a worse war in terms of how, well, no wars are nice, but it's hard to describe, isn't it? The stakes of the war was a consequence of some royal families falling out. That led to the creation of World War II through the ending of World War One. So World War One hasn't really been explored in film, I guess is an easier way of putting it. It's, to me, a more delicate subject. We had the incredible documentary done by Peter Jackson last year for the anniversary, which I definitely recommend. Tate put it in his top films of the decade. If you haven't seen that, please see that. It's worth watching. But when this film was announced, I can't really be excited about war films in that sense, but this was certainly one where I thought Oscar season. It's Sam Mendes. I know not everyone's his biggest Bond fan. I've not seen American Beauty or any of his other stuff, but I thought Sam Mendes doing a World War One film with a very stellar cast, that's very exciting to me. So I was very much anticipating this for quite a while, and without getting into it too quickly, it delivered and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Sam Mendes, like, I'm not going to knock the guy or anything like that. He's clearly a master of his craft. I mean, watch this movie, Jesus Christ. It's up there with like one of the best cinematic experiences I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing. But his track record for me has been a little bit hit and miss, like American Beauty. I've only seen it once. I'm not going to take anything away from that. I'm sure when it came out, it was the back end of the 90s. I think it was like 98, 99. I think that movie came out. And I'm sure it was a very different movie, structurally and just how it was told and everything like that. And it is, again, like a master of his craft and everything like that. But he has had some movies, like Road to Perdition, for example. Absolutely adore that movie. But the Bond films, for me, those two in particular, like I love Casino Royale and everything like that. But his two, Skyfall and Spectre, wasn't the biggest fan of. I know that Skyfall definitely does have his fans, and then Spectre is the more divisive one amongst Bond fans. So this was coming out, and I mean, I just rank it basically on what I see from the trailers before I pass any judgment, and the trailers were all doing it for me. And it wasn't until, and I did actually watch some early reviews for this thing as well, and then people were talking about how it's structured, how it's put across, and how it's chasing after that kind of Birdman style one shot And as soon as they mentioned that, I was instantly hooked because I wanted to see how that would unfold on the big screen. It's an interesting debate, actually, and you sort of brought it up before we went live, in that since that movie came out, in Aratu with Birdman, you was talking about, has it become a bit of a fad? Has it become a bit of a trend now, this one shot, like all these movies coming out with these long unbroken takes? Not to say that long takes weren't a thing before Birdman came out, but definitely I think that movie, in terms of framing a whole movie like that in that style, I definitely think that was the one that championed it. And then you had, films come out like The Revenant, for example, that were also doing the same thing. And then loads of films are doing it now. But I think it works really well for this one. Not to say that war films can't work in the conventional sense that we've seen before, the quick, fast edits and everything like that to keep up the pace and the frenetic action and everything like that. But this was honestly one of the most immersive film experiences and just films I've ever seen. In that you literally follow these two characters from beginning to end over the course of however many hours it is, a day, however long it is, of this guy. And you know, right from the off, you know exactly what the mission is from the opening scene. He's got to deliver this message in enemy lines to stop this massacre of 1,600 men from being sent to their deaths during an attack. That's it. You are given that, and then you are just with them across no man's land, through devastated towns, through just war-torn France and everything like that. And it's harrowing. That's the one word I can think. Like, war films always do tend to have that effect on me, whether it's World War One or World War Two. But definitely with World War One, it is that the futility of war aspect really does, hit home quite a lot. But this was a masterpiece, 100%. I don't think I have any faults with this movie at all. It's just, cinematography wise, directing wise, acting, framing, editing, music, just everything. It's when everything comes together and the results speak for itself with this movie. It was tremendous, I thought.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You mentioned the one take stuff, which you're right. It's been done before Birdman, but I think Birdman's created this sort of, not competition, but you mentioned The Revenant. Opening 10 minutes is a tracking shot.
Yeah,
I'm sure one of the Star Wars films was trying. Rogue One had a couple of 2-minute tracking shots in war scenes, and it was very risky to do a tracking shot for an entire war film. Just the ambition alone before execution of a war film with one tracking. Obviously, it's still cuts and whatnot, but for World War One, when it was trench warfare, people spent years trying to gain miles. That's how insane the whole thing was, and Sam Mendes used this to his advantage. That there are two messenger boys. I could cut away. You could show the enemy. You could show people hiding around the corners. But if you want to build up the tension to the messenger boys and the journey, that you're on the journey with them, and by putting you essentially point of view with them, not of them, but with them, that added to the surprises, to the drama, to the tears, to everything. You are there with them on this journey. And the way it's executed there is so much tension throughout. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do spoilers. I'm not going to sit here compare it to Dunkirk, but I think, speaking of Dunkirk, I'm going to briefly jump to that. I don't like the comparisons. I can see it's like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're very recent war films, obviously singing films for them. But you've got World War II, where it's three narratives, and it's like an auteur's take on the war. The first one is, here's a narrative sort of device to make the film and play with. This one is, here's World War One, which is different for a start, but also here is my one-shot take. And obviously both these films are very personal to the directors. It's worth mentioning that Sam Mendes, he dedicates the film to his grandfather. I didn't know this until a couple of weeks before filming, that his granddad was a messenger in World War One. He was told stories, and through that, the ideas were coming of the film. So it's not based off real life, but I'm sure core concepts of it are. And I think that's very visible when you're with these people, even when it's not tension, even when it's just them sitting around having a drink, just normal conversation. It's those moments that make these characters. And this film relies on them. You can have your one shot, you can have your amazing scenes, your locations, all of this. But if you don't like the two main characters you're going to spend 2 hours with, the film's not going to work. And I think they do a very good job at making them both grounded, realistic, and likable. And I think a big thing with that is the fact they're both unknowns.
Yeah,
I know, I know, me and you aren't the biggest Tom Holland fans, but the rumor is that he was originally cast in this. To me, that would have been too big a name. It would have took me out of the film completely. We've got cameos by Cumberbatch, Richard Madden, Mark Strong, Colin Firth. I looked at those characters and I thought it's Mark Strong, Colin Firth, Benedict Cumberbatch. It's not a criticism, but they worked so well for their moment as such. Whereas you've got your leads who you're with on this journey, and by not knowing too much about them, I think it made it a lot better to carry on and get them sort of realistic stakes. Is that me sounding a bit weird?
Yeah, no, totally. I get that as well, and I actually really appreciated that there were unknowns as well, because it just from the opening scene again. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but these two guys are just like handpicked, like you two get up, and it just adds to that sense of anonymity kind of thing. It's just sort of like an everyday guy. Like you could have picked anyone in the trench kind of thing. If you'd have had a big name actor, then I think you would have gone, oh, that's Tom Holland. And you immediately attach that celebrity name to that person, even though they're playing a character. But you don't really have that effect with this movie. And I think you mentioned before we went live as well, like the big names you mentioned, you Colin Firth, Mark Strong, Benedict Cumberbatch. It works to have them in those places of authority, like higher up on the hierarchy, because they are meant to carry more authority with them and command that presence, like leader of men and everything like that. So it works for those characters there. Yeah, go on, sorry.
I was just getting story. You kind of mentioned it there. These are just two people that were picked out. There are hundreds of messenger boys in this war. The war went on for, I want to say, well, I don't want to get it wrong, but 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil the ending. Maybe the next 30 seconds might be vaguely spoilerish, but the concept of the ending is it's a day in the life of this. Spoiler now, the message is given over, and then he is told, now fuck off, Lance Corporal, which is basically we've just seen you do this for 2 hours, but this is your job. You've served your purpose. Now you need to go back and keep serving your purpose. And that's what hit me with this film as well, that this film, and spoilers now, this film is that whole, this is just two anyone's from this same thing, doing this over and over and over again in this war. And that has a really big impact on me.
And you just think about how many hundreds and thousands of people they just pass through, like the shots where it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever seen West Wing, where it's like them walking towards the camera as the camera pulls back and follows them through corridors, and they're passing all these people in the dugouts and the trenches, and like they're going on this mission, they've been given this task, and it's like, well, what's that guy doing over there? What are those doing in the background? And it really does give it that sense of scale, and just as you said, that they're like a drop in the ocean, essentially, everything else that's going on. And yeah, although you do feel fulfilled at the end in some way, in that, I guess we are into spoilers now, in a way the mission is completed. Like he does achieve in some way what he did, what he intended to do, but then you do realize that there is another year of this thing to go. And although he saved the lives of X amount of men, tomorrow they could do an attack and the same amount of men, if not more, could just get killed anyway. So it's a bittersweet ending, definitely. And I think it has to be. Like, you couldn't have an all-out happy ending to this thing, because there are no happy endings when it comes to World War One.
And that's the thing. And without getting into history, by making this 1917, you eradicate the Somme.
Yeah.
If they say, if anyone knows what the Somme is, it's by far the biggest failure in military history. They turn around and say, you need to get this message to the front line. They're going to go over the top at the Somme tomorrow. Based on real life, this isn't going to end well. They're going to fail, and 100,000 people are going to die. This film's called 1918. It has the unfortunate Hollywood ending of, he saved the war. Doesn't work like that. But making it 1917, 1 out of 4 years in that war, I just felt that made it completely. Yes, there's obviously a real life location to it and whatnot, and you can read into it, but it wasn't a detrimental, important, effort changing battle. It was another day.
Yeah,
and I think it's the moments that resonate with me. And we look at this film, for best screenplay, for two characters, there's not an awful amount of dialogue.
I'd say it's very minimal. It's very minimal throughout.
The way it's written, it's the sets, it's the soundtrack, everything, as you mentioned, everything tied in together to make this uncomfortable, real, you know, like you're there. There's a moment they're walking over no man's land, and there is a rotting corpse, horse's body, and it's not a day old. It's not skeleton. It's like weeks. Like there is a bit of white skeleton coming through. There's no bones. There's fires, and it's so uncomfortable. And it puts you into this perspective of that's what it was like. The people in the trenches, you know, those that have been there for weeks and are losing their plot. They don't know what day it is anymore.
Yeah.
You've got guys giving orders, crying because they know it's not pointless, but they're crying at giving any order because that's the toll it took on you. And I think so much credit goes out to Sam Mendes because he got the core story right. He got his one shot right, but he got every realistic element of this war right. And I think that's why it's resonating with people. And it's a story I think that needed to be told. As we said before, World War One isn't something that is explored often enough in today's history. And I think this film, it's not a case of raising awareness. It's just remembering those, and the dedication at the end epitomizes this.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a place for a story to be told like this and to be set in this time period, 100%. And you talked about how that uneasy atmosphere constantly throughout, like, you should be focusing on the main characters, but my eyes were like always on the horizon, just like everywhere. Every time the camera pulled back and there's like a new set piece, you're waiting for that gun to go off. You're waiting for that shell to blast. And in those moments of silence where it is building tension, my favorite scene in this movie, my favorite part of the film, is the initial bit where they do first go over the top and start making that trek. And you get all this, you get a great sense of geography. You're following them from the beginning of the film all the way through, almost unbroken. And just the way that I want to see the behind the scenes of this, because I want to know how big these sets were. I was looking out for the cuts. I always love to do that with these long sort of unbroken films. And there are some scenes where you can tell if they dip into like a dark, like trench or something like that, then you can tell that they would have cut the camera there. But most of the time I was watching this, like, I can't tell where they would have cut this. And they must have had to, because I want to know how big those trenches were that they built, that they were walking through, and then straight onto the mud. And then you have to think about it as well. Like, if they've been traversing over this mud for like 10 minutes, and if it is an unbroken cut, if someone messes up or flubs, you've then got to have the new boots they've got to put on, because continuity they can't have. And it's just, I was thinking about all these things. I was watching it and thinking, I don't know how, logistically, I don't even understand how a director, a crew, a team could even achieve this and think about it. And for that reason alone, like, we talk about this year, like, definitely I would say in recent memory, this is the strongest Academy Award year for films, especially nominated for Best Picture. We said we'd be happy to see any of them win. Absolutely, 100%. But this movie, like, Once Upon a Time was up there for me, definitely. But after watching this movie, just in terms of, they're very different films. It's so difficult to even compare them, and I don't want to compare them. But just from a filmmaking standpoint, this was like a magnum opus in a way. It's without a doubt for me the best thing Mendes has ever made. Just everything. The scenes in this movie that have gone down as like in my top 10 favorite film scenes of all time. It's not spoiling anything. It's the bit in the trailer, the bit where he's running across the battlefield as everyone's pouring over the top. The score as well. Thomas Newman. My God, that scene in particular. Just chills. It was harrowing to watch. It really, really was, that scene especially. But everything, like every set piece in this film, because it just constantly builds and like ebbs and flows with the action. Even in those quieter moments where they're just stalking across deserted land, there is that constant tension and atmosphere there, and it never drags. Like, I never checked my watch once during this whole thing. It's just intense. It's a really intense experience. But my God, I think that everyone should experience it.
Yeah. At the cinema, biggest screen you can get to. It's films like, it's films like this, but it's like this was made to be seen on a big screen. Sam Mendes intentionally wants you to go watch it at the cinema. The over-the-top scene at the end. Normally, I'm kind of against big climaxes being put in trailers, but this needed it. And the beauty of this film is that there is not too much action. It doesn't have too little action, but it doesn't have to. Oh, here's just two guys running across no man's land for 2 hours and bombs going off left, right, center. It's not that kind of film. The film thrives on its tension, and it makes these scenes with action even more intense because you've grown to these. You've become attached to the characters, and the more danger their lives are in, the higher the stakes are, and that's what this film ultimately delivers. It takes you emotionally up and down throughout as well as from a technical standpoint. I think personally it should win Best Film.
Yeah.
I hope it will. I mean, I can say all of them, but I think it's a straight shot between this and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But that's more so because if Hollywood wins, it's also because it's about making films in Hollywood. This is the BAFTA's done and dusted. This is BAFTA's best film, and I think this should take best film at the Oscars too.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's going to be, man, that live stream is going to be intense when we do that. Like, it's going to be a really fun year this year. Other years with like the Oscar picks, you sort of have a 1 or 2 walk away winners. This year, it could go to anyone. It's definitely I think it's three picks, isn't it? It's that Hollywood. It's this, Hollywood, and what was this? What would you say the third pick was? Wasn't Marriage Story or
Marriage Story, Irishman, any of them?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 top hitters, but yeah, no, go and see this movie. It's an absolute. I'm not going to forget this movie, like 100%. Like, it sounds cliche, but like I'm already thinking about it now. I want to see it again. But maybe I shouldn't, because there's a lot of movies I still need to watch, I think, and we are going to try and get reviews out for every single Oscar nominated movie. We're working on it. We're working our way through the movies. I think the next one we should probably aim for is, I know you're seeing Parasite this Friday, I believe. So I'll try and get that watch. We'll try and get a review out probably over the weekend for that one. I need to watch Little Women as well. That's out too. And Ford versus Ferrari, I need to get to that. They're the best picture winners. Then it's on to the acting ones. Just hit the subscribe button. Just follow us. We'll get them out there. We'll have them all out before the Oscars hit. And then obviously we are going to cap it off with our Oscars live stream throughout the night during the entire ceremony. We're going to be talking about all the awards as they're announced. We're going to be talking about films in general from last year or any year. If you guys want to watch it, send us any questions during the stream and we'll turn it into a Q&A as well, and give us a chance to sort of get to know you guys as well and talk to you guys throughout the event as well. So that'll do it for our review today. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.